Welcome to another episode of Breaking Into Cybersecurity. Today, we have Wade Wells, who will be on the show sharing his experience of breaking into cybersecurity. But we do this show so that we can chronicle the stories of individuals who have broken in from different fields and them sharing their tips and tricks along the way. That way, if you see a role model of yourself or an area that you want to work in, you can kind of take tips and tricks from them. For those of you joining us on LinkedIn, Wade's LinkedIn profile is in the description. For those of you on YouTube, hit that subscribe button down below and then the notification button. That way you'll see us pop up the next time we come on. And for those of you on Twitch or after the fact, leave comments, leave ratings. We really appreciate it. That's how we get noticed and more people come into the industry. Wade, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background. Where were you before cyber?
Yeah, so before cyber, I was in customer service for around 10 years, working at mainly restaurants and fast food industry. So before making that big leap into like the IT and then further into cybersecurity, I worked for a popular burger chain in Southern California called In-N-Out Burger, where I was there for 7 years, most of it full time, most of it, and while going to school full time. So I was hustling hard, and I made it all the way up into management. And it was a fun time. I learned plenty. I still use a lot of what I learned there as my core foundation of my worth ethics. I also keep it on my resume, which is kind of a hot topic. A lot of people don't think I should, but I do, just because it's a good conversation starter. And usually, if the company is from Southern California, they love it and they eat it up. From there, I made the leap into IT, and then within 6 months into IT, I was able to transition into cybersecurity. And my big things were, since I worked in customer service, I wanted to see what I could bring to the table that other people couldn't. So I was able to talk to people, of course. I was able to bring down pretty chaotic situations and talk people down from being angry. So of course I transitioned to customer facing stuff. I was an IT help desk for a little bit, and that was, of course, hell, but it was a good place to learn, right? And it gave me all that IT stuff. And then transitioned to a managed security provider, and it was pretty much the same thing. I was customer facing, I was talking to people, but I also had that cybersecurity. And I used all the skills in which I learned my customer service and was able to transition them right over. Yeah, soft skills galore. You don't even know. Like, working smart, not hard, right? That's key to my ethos. Uh, Looking at something and trying to articulate it. You can have 100 people working hard and one person working smart, and it's the same. Yeah, that's my core foundation. I go deeper if you want, but it's
Yeah, let's dig into that. Well,
yeah.
first of all, I want to pay homage to In and Out because I lived for 7 years in Southern California, and my brother actually worked at In and Out
Oh, okay.
in Palm Desert, where we used to live. And every time I go back out to the West Coast, Best Coast, I always make sure I get some In and Out. So I could see why it's a conversation starter. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
for something like that, and for that many years, I would keep it on the resume. For those that are listening, right? If it were 6 months or something like that, then you could argue for taking it off. But if it's a 7 year stint and you can kind of show that growth and that evolution, I would keep it on the resume.
Yeah.
So, um,
It was in management as well, right? So I was wearing several different hats. There was times where I was managing 80 people in an 8-hour shift,
wow.
and breaks, trainings, making sure product, profit and loss. You wear a bunch. That was where I learned the you wear different hats type of deal. And so you're wearing a mentor hat, an HR hat, the manager hat, making sure you're still profiting hat. It was a fun time though.
And talk about preparing you for incident response, for
Oh,
dealing with those situations. I mean,
yeah.
it's always a rush of adrenaline trying to work in a store like that. Because for those that don't know In and Out, it is usually 110% busy all day long.
Mhm.
Um, so it's an adrenaline rush all day long. And I can see running 80 staff in one shift. Yeah, that's crazy.
One of my favorite stories. So the store I worked at, that I got hired at, I've worked at several stores. So I'm in San Diego currently, worked at several there. But the store I got hired at is in a tiny town in between Bakersfield and LA, right over the Grapevine, if anybody knows where that is. And the store was actually what they would call a travel store. It's only busy during travel seasons. And so there'd be times at night where there's only two of us in there. And then all of a sudden, three buses roll up and you got two people, two-man jamming it. And I remember that there's one key story that I remember, and it kind of changed my life. And usually, when somebody asks why In-N-Out is so successful, they say, "Oh, the burgers have excellent quality, the workers are great, this, that." It's this lady in the middle of this two bus rush, me doing everything as the manager is just taking money, asks him, and he goes, "You know why In-N-Out's so great? Because we have people like Wade working here and doing it." Dude, and that changed my whole life on mentoring and talking to people and realizing that all it takes is one comment to someone to make like their life different. So
Absolutely. So as you grew in your career and you wanted to try something else, what got you interested into IT and cyber?
yeah, so I was always big into computers. Growing up, growing up in the San Fernando Valley of LA, my dad dumpster dive and built our first computer. And I remember I learned how to spell Windows in a DOS command prompt in first grade. That's my origin story. Playing Duke Nukem on Christmas, waiting, waiting for presents. And I always had knowledge of it and playing WoW and modding and doing that type of stuff. But life caught up to me, and luckily I had a friend working at a data center. And as I was a manager in and out, I got severely burnt out to the point where I caught pneumonia while working there as a manager. And I was 24. So a 24-year-old shouldn't be catching pneumonia. And I've always loved tech. And that was the final push to push me into it. The crazy part is I actually didn't make what I was making in and out for until 4 years into IT, 3 years into security. Like it took me forever to catch back up, but it was a good leap overall.
Well, I think for like work-life balance, that pays
Ah,
itself back in the longevity of your
yeah,
career.
yeah.
But yeah, sometimes people do need to get to that stage of burnt out before they realize that they need a change. So you went the route of starting all over,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, why did you want to start all over when you had all this tech experience?
So I originally went to school for tech
Hmm.
and college. So as I was working at In and Out, my first degree I was going to get was tech, and I winded up going into having a really good poli sci teacher, and switched my gears to poli sci. Went and worked for a lobbyist while I was working at In and Out, while I was going to school, and then while I was working for interning for that lobbyist, I realized I'm like, this is not cool. Like these people kind of suck. And at that point in my life, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do anymore. And I was tired of going to school and I was tired of just like living off the scraps. And so I just stayed at In and Out because it paid very well. It's fun. The environment is great, usually there, but it is a work hard, play hard mentality. And I realized as I was aging, that's not going to work well as I got older. And so I decided I needed to make that huge career move, and I might as well make it into something I already loved and had some experience in, whereas it's just building a computer or playing video
Yeah.
games and modifying stuff. So it was an interesting leap. Luckily, I found that data center to work at, and they had a bunch of tech people, but they didn't have anyone who wanted to talk to people in customer service, and it worked perfect. I slipped right in. They'd put me on the phone. I talked to people, but the thing is, half the time I had no clue what I was talking about. Setting up DNS, setting up LAMP servers, trying to get someone's Plex server running, or yeah, that was one, or C panels, that type of stuff. It was a shared hosting platform.
Hmm.
Um, it's called CarryNet. You got still going, or kind of still going. And the thing that piqued my interest in security there was Shodan had several servers hosted there. So we used to
Oh,
get
nice.
complaints all the time that we were scanning the internet, and they'd come in and we had a whole process for it. And there was one guy who worked there who was our head of security, whose name was Zach Wickholm, and he took me under his wing. And it was until I was there for around 9 months. I always just thought I was going to be a sysadmin. I was like, all right, that's fine. Like I like fixing, like building stuff. And it wasn't until I started social networking pretty hard that someone offered to help me get into security.
Nice. I had a similar experience. You talking through that. I ended up working at Terramark, now part of Verizon, which is one of the hubs in Miami where fiber comes in from the Caribbean, from Central America, and even from Europe and Africa. And huge fiber pipes come up. And yeah, they back then Motorola, Google was building out, Amazon was building out, and you saw the custom servers that they were bringing in. They didn't have a shell, like they were open air,
Oh
like
yeah. Oh
custom servers, and it's like, whoa, look at what these people are doing. But yeah, that's really cool. Like, it took me looking at the sock team and one of my uh, friends that we went through boot camp at the same time. He started there first, and then told me about a data center position, and then he moved to the sock, and I'm like, "What's the sock?"
oh yeah.
And yeah,
Pique the
definitely.
interest.
So you said you were social, you were working social media.
Yeah.
Someone offered you to bring you in under their wing. Um, what was that like? What was your approach there?
Yeah. So once I got back to the data center, once I got at it in and out, I kind of just like used the shotgun method and did everything I possibly could. I started like going to local meetups within. So in San Diego, there's a pretty big tech hub and pretty big military. So there's a lot of like Cisco meetups or tech
Mhm.
meetups, OWASP, that type of stuff. That was my main source of networking. But I also went back to school, which was great. I went to a local junior college and started doing IT courses again. And then meeting people in those courses was actually pretty big. I still talk to some of those people today. And the other thing, like going to school while you're actually doing a job is huge steps. Like I was ahead all the time. And one cool thing is a lot of the jobs, at least in tech, if you had downtime, allowed me to actually work on homework
Mhm.
as I was working because it's studying on both sides. And then the third thing is I got several certs while I was there. So I was literally hitting all the points. I had like no social life for around a year, networking, certs, and school. And it was great. But the networking thing I credit as the thing that worked the most, just meeting people, going out there. And what wound up happening is a friend of mine who actually worked with me at the data center wound up getting fired and then hired at an MSP locally. And right when he got hired, he's like, "Hey man, they're looking for a bunch of people. If you want to come in, I can put your name in." And I'm like, "Cool." Sent him my resume, applied. Next day I had an interview and took off from there, and it was great.
Wow. So
uh,
that really shows that the benefit of networking and having a strong network structure. What were you going back to school for at the
yeah.
time?
So I decided to go back to school for IT. So I already had all my general ed done. So while I was working at In and Out, I was working full time. I was going to school full time. So my usual schedule was 2 days off were school, 5 days on were at
Wow.
In and Out. Yeah, it was rough, especially when I was. So I grew up in a small town up in the mountains. My In and Out was 30 miles one direction, and my school was like 40 miles the opposite direction. So I was
Wow.
commuting 7 days a week, but it gave me really good endurance. So I went back to school, had all my gen ed done, and went to school for just IT, and got it was relatively quick because I had the gen ed done already. And then once I got into cybersecurity, already had the AA. I decided, all right, where can I get a BA or BS as cheap and quickly as possible? And I heard an online ad for Colorado State University Global Campus on the radio. I was
Mhm.
like, all right, might as well check them out, and jumped into that, and then did the same thing, started doing homework while at work, like working in the sock. I worked 4 on 4 off 12-hour shifts, and there was downtime sometimes, so doing homework while there or studying and getting more certs. It was just a
Wow.
grind. Those first 3 years were a complete grind for me.
That sounds like me. When I finished my associates in a year and a half, and first it was 19 credits, 21 credits, and then 27 credits. So that's how I finished it. And I was working full time too, and then ended up doing my bachelor's online. Took
Yeah.
that one a little bit slower,
Uh,
and then my master's online. So you mentioned you got certs too.
yeah.
What certs did you get, and what pushed you towards getting them?
Yeah, so the data center I worked at actually required us to get Microsoft certs.
Okay.
I don't. I know now it's actually illegal to in California to require someone to get certs. I don't know if it was back then, but I also didn't know any better. I was studying for the 7410, which is a pretty high end, pretty like middle end Windows Server cert.
Mhm.
And as I was doing that, because I was going from 0 to 100. I was studying other certs on the side. I winded up getting several Microsoft MTA certs, so for security and administration, which are their lowest end certs,
Mhm.
and the security plus. And I did those three as I was studying for the Windows 7410. I actually winded up never getting the 7410. I took it 3 times and failed, which, oh well. But I got those other 3 certs, and that was one of the big things. I got all those while at the data center, so that was
Yeah.
one of the things that helped push to get the job at the managed security provider working
Yeah,
at
I
them.
was,
So
I was I was about to ask that. So you got the Security Plus and
yeah,
the others, and that helped propel you to the MSSP.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And then once at the MSP, so I stayed on the ball, right? I was already still going to school at the time, and this was when I got the Network Plus, which I will admit it took me it took me twice to get it. The Wi-Fi's just had me all strung up, and I couldn't remember each one, and I wound up failing that part. But once I was there, the cyber ops, the CCNA cyber ops came out, as well as the Cisco Cybersecurity Analyst Plus came out. I beta tested both of those tests, and I didn't wind up getting the cyber ops, but I winded up getting the CYSA Plus
Mhm.
through the beta test, and it was exactly what I was doing at work, like to the T, ports, scans, signatures, understanding connections, and stuff like that. And that winded up helping me pivot to my job after the managed security provider.
What kind of job is it? I won't ask you for the
No,
employer,
no,
but
no,
what type of
no, no,
job
no,
is
no. So I worked for the managed security provider was just a straight security analyst doing alerts, sending them off to customers. The job after that was working for an energy company and their SOC. So I went from SOC to SOC,
it? Okay.
which sucks. I will admit, like I've put my time in on the SOC, and it's not as fun as it's about as fun as you think it is, right? 24/7
Well,
and then coming
tell
in.
tell people what it's
Okay.
like, for
So
those people that never
yeah.
been in a SOC.
So when you come in to do a new stock, usually if you're lucky, you get a good shift, right? If it's a 24/7 stock, there's going to be people working nights, people working days, depending on days off and how the rotation is. The first stock I worked at actually had 4 on 4 offs, which was awesome. And but it also had 3 shifts of 4 on 4 offs. And your days off would rotate, which was great. So some weeks you would have Saturday, Sunday off, some you wouldn't. I actually super enjoyed it. And coming in on the weekends was a little rough when you see all your friends going out and having fun on social media. But usually that was the study time. Everything was a little bit slower. You got your hours in. Moving to the actual corporation stock, the energy corporation, that was a little bit rougher. They had set days off, and I was the low man on the totem pole. So I was working swing shifts every now and then, usually around 4 to 12:30 at night, and 4 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. And
Mhm.
then if somebody called in sick, I was the guy who had to come in and cover. So my days off would get stuttered every now and then. And then if there's something big going on, you're probably going to have to work overtime. So there was weeks where I was working like 60-hour weeks, managing the SOC, making sure all those alerts in the queue got done. It's rough, but as long as once again, I'm very vocal and very easy to talk to. The one thing is, if you can just call someone, usually you can solve almost all the problems that much quicker. You get an alert. Why did this person go to this link? I could follow the logs for an hour and find out that, hey, they got that link in an email. That email came from this person. And then that link was actually a referral link from that email link. And I could usually figure that out, but then why would they click it? Did they click it? That type of stuff. Most of the time, if you call them and talk to them, they'll give you all the answers. I will admit, sometimes people are scared to talk to security, but if you're talking with friendliness in your voice and kindness, right? And that here comes that in and out, right? I've sparkling. What is it? Now I can't even think. A sparkling, clean environment, and always like speaking with happiness. I'm supposed to. You're supposed to hear the smile through my voice, which I can still do today.
I love
It
it.
works really well. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So What
It was a long explanation.
as you went through like your hunting for the second role, the first role you got from a network
Yeah, yeah.
referral. What was the second role hunting like?
Yeah, so the second role hunting was a lot easier, right? I already had a little bit of experience. Once again, I kept a LinkedIn this entire time and making sure everything's up to date, all my positions, what I'm doing, and my certs. Luckily, I had a recruiter reach out to me, and that was the first time I'd ever actually had a recruiter reach out to me. I was super excited about it, and it worked out fine. We met up, got coffee. She made sure I wasn't crazy, which is usually that first call. And then they set up the call with the manager and then set up the on-site call. It was a lot. It was probably one of the easier jobs I've ever had. But what was nice was that job actually led to the job I currently have because once again, networking and knowing people came to the rescue. Yeah.
Wow. So what are some of the things that you mentioned social, but you don't mention what you do? What are some of the
Yeah.
things you do to stay current and to set up your digital profile?
Yeah. So once having a LinkedIn, right, being somewhat active on it, I honestly, to be all honest, I hate social media just because it's a lot of like clout and recognition and like look what I'm doing type of stuff. I'll see what other people are doing and I might get excited for them, especially because I have friends on there. But I try not to be oversharing, if that makes sense, especially on both LinkedIn and Twitter. Um, One thing I always try to do is join several communities at a time. So I'm on Discord. I'm pretty active on a couple of Discord channels. I'm big with BHIS and all of their stuff, which is great. They're very big with the community. And then also as well as subreddits. I'm big on couple subreddits where people are asking for help or people are sharing stuff. And meeting people through there has also been pretty rewarding. And you get to learn new tools. And then with those tools, actually maybe talk to the creators if they're open source. And it's worked out pretty well for me with my career, just going just not too far with the social media, but just enough to maybe put me out of my comfort zone. Hence this. Yeah, right. So
Yeah, it sounds like that even helps you with your continuous education because you're
oh yeah.
reading subreddits and you're reaching out and asking questions and filling in those potential blind spots that you have.
Yeah, and I also do so the current job I'm kind of like I'm wearing several hats of like security engineer, threat hunter, and threat intelligence. And so
Mhm.
being that social person also really helps with threat intel and knowing where I can go for all the sources, who can I talk to ask questions, and who may have some type of internal scoop or access to something I know. Works really well
Explain
too.
those roles, those different hats for people that might not understand what they are.
Yeah. So security intelligence, right? I'm trying to answer questions for our leaders and mitigate risk in any way, or at least augment other teams so they can mitigate risk. So there's several different things I do with monitoring dark web stuff, right? Monitoring attack surface, looking for domains that look like ours, any like punny code domains, stuff like that, or even just bringing in feeds and then enhancing current alerts. That one's a little bit lower on the totem pole. So that one's actually fun because I get to write and I get to explain and talk to people a bit more. The security engineering part is a little bit more of configurations, right? Installing new sensors, making sure everything has the right configuration, hardening those configurations to the point where the salesperson can't do as much as they really. That's making sure they can do everything they need to, but they don't need to do anything too technical on or even vice versa, making sure the DevOps person has access to do everything they need to do.
Mhm.
And then that leads right into the threat hunting part, which is probably my one, I would say my favorite of the three, right? Looking for the hackers, finding them, going through the logs all day, reading the alerts, uh, going down the rabbit hole and finding something. That's the best. I always tell people like my day is great when other people's days are bad. That's the worst part, right? When I find something, it's usually going to be bad, but I'm having a great time doing it, finding malware, then taking it apart maybe, and then deep diving even further.
Are you allowed to share some of those bad days and do write-ups on that and do presentations on that?
So the bad days, not as much. I have done a presentation on like what I've done with security engineering and intelligence and mixed those. I'm trying to think of a good bad day. One of the I worked WannaCry while at the managed security provider.
Mhm.
That was a good bad day. Um, yeah. So like of course the board just lights up, right? Everyone is going off. We're trying to figure out the indicators. We're trying to see, do we have the traffic to monitor people's network? Can we tell if there's like outbound 445 or increased traffic of 445, which is server message block, which is how WannaCry propagated, right?
Mhm.
And trying to go deeper and understand. And then me at the time, I had a friend, my mentor, Zach Wacombe, who was working threat intel still at the time for Flashpoint, I believe. Then I was in conversation with him, like, hey, what do you know? Like, what are you seeing? And this was before the domain kill switch came out.
Mhm.
That was really fun. Other times, like usually it's just like a crypto miner or someone's trying to pivot in the network, but it's good times, but I feel bad that I'm enjoying other people's suffering sometimes.
Well, wow. This has been a riveting conversation, and we're
Yeah.
we're almost at the end of our 30 minutes. So one of the last questions I like to ask is, Wade, pretend you're looking at your 20-year-old self. What advice would you give them?
Wow. Learn programming then. No, I didn't learn how to program until after I got into security, so that would have been great. Honestly, I love the path that I'm on. I think ensuring myself that it works out in the end, right? It worked out. You're doing good now. Back then when I was that was when I was prime in and out, gun ho, working 40, 50-hour weeks and while going to school. And I had some hard times, right? Understanding that I was in the suck for a while, but it was good looking back on it, but living it was kind of bad. I would say just keep going, working hard. The hustle works out, right? Keep trying, don't stop trying, and keep learning. Don't stop learning. That's the best part about cybersecurity. I guess the best part and the worst part. You always have to continue to learn. And sometimes I'm jealous of people who get to leave their jobs at home and don't have to learn later on, where I'm always looking at the news feed.
Well,
But
I mean, I guess we could, but then it wouldn't be as fun, right?
right? No, I agree. I agree. Yeah, it's that double-edged sword. It comes back at you every now
Well, Wade, thank you so much for having this great conversation. For those of you on LinkedIn, follow Wade, follow myself. For those of you on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, share this with all your friends and family. Those of you on Twitch or Twitter or the podcast platforms, feel free to share this episode out with lots of folks. We really love having curious folks like Wade that know how to persevere, that know how to find the answers, and that always want to continuously learn in this industry. So, Wade, thank you very much for coming on and for sharing your adventure.
and then. Thank you for having me. It was